comsec niya.
Hindi ba nila pinapakinggan yun? Wala nga yun nung isang araw eh. Diyan, sinabihan ni Depsec. Sinabihan ba ni Depsec, Bilyen, na sabihan doon?
O ito ma, marami ka ditong for sponsorship na mga okay, ito to. Good afternoon.
I have to talk to you about
Ah, yeah, I talked to her.
I'm so upset.
Ako din, that she wrote that letter in black and white. Ah, no, another one pala. Yeah, 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 that one, the report that the library, right? Wala. And this one,
Ladies and gentlemen, let us all rise for the arrival of the Honorable Senate President and the Senators of the Republic of the Philippines.
Senator Pangilinan. The 36th session of the Senate in the third regular session of the 17th Congress is hereby called to order. Session is called to order. Let us bow our heads and keep our heads for the 1-minute silent prayer. Thank you. The Secretary will please call the roll.
Roll call of members, the Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, De Lima, Drilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Onasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Legarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Pimentel, Poe, Recto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Zubiri, Senate President Soto III.
With 14 senators present, the chair declares the presence of a quorum. Joe de Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we have several guests in the gallery today. We have former Solicitor General Estelito Mendoza, the distinguished legal luminary, is here with us. Together with Honorable Supreme Court Justice Ramon Hernando, and also with us are board members from Ifugao, Victor Bunol, as well as campus directors of Ifugao State University, Director Manuel Malingan, and the Rice Terraces Farmers Cooperative. We also have with us Jasper Jason Cañero, Secretary of the Mio Prestige Club of the Philippines. We have also students from Kamalayan Organization, Kamalayan Organization, students from Saint Scholastica College, Manila, grades 11 and 12 are here with us as well. Oh, the alma mater of Senator Risa Ontiveros. And also executives from DWIZ and Mr. Adrian Cabangon and their group. And also we have guest students from St. Paul University that are here with us. So we have St. Scholastica and St. Paul. And we also have students from St. Jude Catholic School, Manila. We're a full house today, Mr. President.
We'd like to welcome all our guests to the Senate. You may proceed, Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we dispense with the reading of the Journal of the 35th session, Monday, November 19, 2018, and consider the same as approved. I so move.
Any objections? Chair hears none. Reading of the journal is dispensed with and hereby approved.
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Secretary will proceed with reference of business.
Bills on first reading, Senate number 2101 entitled, An Act Granting Benefits and Incentives to Overseas Filipino Workers Investing in Business in the Philippines, introduced by Senator Paulo Benigno Bam Aquino IV.
Referred to the Committees on Labor, Trade, and Ways and Means.
Senate number 2102 entitled, An Act Amending Republic Act number 7042, otherwise known as the Foreign Investments Act of 1991, as amended by Republic Act number 8179 and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Win Gatchalian.
Referred to the Committees on Economic Affairs, Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship.
Senate number 2103 entitled, An Act Developing the Pili Industry, Creating for the Purpose the Pili Subsidy Fund and the Pili Research and Development Center, and in declaring the province of Sorsogon as the Pili Capital of the Philippines, introduced by Senator Escudero.
Referred to the Committees on Agriculture, Trade, and Finance.
Senate number 2104 entitled, An Act Providing for the Automatic Reversal of the Excise Tax on Fuel under Republic Act number 10963, otherwise known as the Tax Reform for Acceleration and Inclusion Train, amending for the purpose the National Internal Revenue Code NIRC of 1997 as amended, introduced by Senator Joel Villanueva.
Referred to the Committee on Ways and Means.
Resolutions. PS Resolution number 943 entitled, Resolution urging the Executive Department to release the definitive draft of the oil and gas exploration agreements with China before signing, and directing Senate Committee on Energy to investigate in aid of legislation the potential deals on oil and gas exploration in China, introduced by Senators Trillanes IV and Pangilinan.
To the Committee on Rules.
PS Resolution number 944 entitled, Resolution directing the Committee on Education, Arts and Culture to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation into the possible delisting of the Baroque churches of the Philippines from the UNESCO World Heritage List, introduced by Senator Drilon.
Referred to the Committee on Education.
PS Resolution number 945 entitled, Resolution directing the Senate Committee on Women, Children, Family Relations, and Gender Equality to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the continued proliferation of child cyber sex abuse in the Philippines despite existing laws, with the end in view of ensuring that the welfare of the Filipino children and youth are protected through the tightening of applicable laws and the expansion of the implementation of existing legislation penalizing and prohibiting child cyber sex trafficking, introduced by Senator Laila M. De Lima.
Referred to the Committees on Women, Science and Technology.
PS Resolution number 946 entitled, Resolution directing the Committee on Labor, Employment, and Human Resources and other appropriate Senate committees to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on social dumping and the plight of the 22 Filipino truck drivers rescued apprehended in Padborg, Denmark, introduced by Senator Joel Villanueva.
Referred to the Committees on Labor and Foreign Relations. Majority Leader.
President. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we were discussing in the corner here the events that happened or transpired last night during the presidential visit, and I'd like to make special mention on the performance of Lea Salonga, our one of our most distinguished performers and artists in the Philippines. And we were discussing on how she made us so proud of her performance during the state visit of the Chinese president. I just want to put that on record, Mr. President. Mr. President, may I move to resume consideration House Bill number 8302. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
Mr. President, the status of the measures were in the period of interpellation. I believe, Lisa? I make the reconsider. Tapusin ko na lang to para tapusin. Mr. President, may we recognize the sponsor, Senator Grace Poe, and to propound some questions, Senator Risa Ontiveros.
Senator Grace Poe is recognized, Chairman of the Committee on Public Services, and to interpolate Senator Ontiveros.
We ask for 1 minute suspension. We ask for 1 minute
Session is suspended. The other session can continue. Ernie? Oo nga, oo. Ibabay ka muli niyan. Ready? Sige. Mamanifest siya ng uli ng Bicam. Magmamanifest uli siya na magbabicam siya. Oo nga, i-continue niya. Reconstitute the panel o yung pa rin? Hindi na, pwede ko i-manifest. Huwag ni-reconsider mo yung backup sila. Ni-reconvene nga niya.
Ready to issue, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Guys, quiet. Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, while we're waiting for the interpellation of Senator Risa Ontiveros, we move to suspend consideration of House Bill number 8302. I so move. Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, the consideration of the measure is hereby suspended.
Mr. President, we'd just like to recognize some other members of the gallery joining us today. We have the President of the National Youth Commission, Ronald Cardema, who's with us. We also have from the district, or from Manila, Councilor Ewing Dairit. And we have Mayor Tony Aurelio of Rizal, Laguna, a beautiful town of Rizal, Laguna. And we have guests of Senator Gordon, who are part of the delegation of Chinese President Xi Jinping. We have Mr. Zhang Zinzin, Louis Shen, and Benjamin Lim that are with us here today. Mr. President, we are in receipt of the Bicameral Conference Committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 2031 and House Bill number 5236, entitled An Act Providing for the Rank Classification in the Philippine National Police. I move to consider the said bicameral committee report, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, consideration is in order.
Mr. President, I move that we recognize the chair, the chair of the panel, distinguished Senator Panfilo Lacson, for his sponsorship of the bicameral conference committee report.
Senator Pambilo Lacson is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. as the chairman of your Committee on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs, it is my honor and privilege to report back to this august body the joint explanation of the Conference Committee on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 2031 and House Bill number 5236. This is an act providing for the rank classification in the Philippine National Police, amending for the purpose Section 28 of Republic Act number 6975 as amended, otherwise known as the Department of the Interior and Local Government Act of 1990. Simply put, Mr. President, the House contingent agreed to adopt the Senate version of the bill, of the measure. I move to ratify this measure, Mr. President, or the Bicameral Conference Committee report.
What does the majority leader
Yes,
say?
Mr. President, we fully support and we move to ratify the Bicameral Conference Committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 2031 and House Bill number 5236.
So your motion is to adopt and ratify.
Adopt and ratify.
Any objection? Chair hears none. The Bicameral Conference Committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill 2031 and House Bill 5236 is hereby adopted and ratified.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Congratulations are in order to the Senator Lacson for this measure. Mr. President, we are in receipt of another Bicameral Conference Committee report. These are the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 1636 and House Bill number 7652. It's entitled an act, Mobile Number Portability Act of the distinguished gentleman from Valenzuela, Senator Gatchalian. I move that we consider the said bicameral report, Mr. President.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Consideration of the measure or the bicameral report is in order.
Mr. President, I move to recognize the chairman of the Senate panel, Senator Gatchalian, for his sponsorship speech on the report.
Senator Gatchalian is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Magandang hapon po sa lahat. Mr. President, distinguished peers, good afternoon to you all. I have the honor of submitting for ratification a copy of the Bicameral Conference Committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 1636 and House Bill number 7652, known as the Mobile Number Portability Act, or more popularly as the Lifetime Cell Phone Number Act. With the reconciled version hammered out by the Senate and the House panels, we look forward to providing mobile subscriber nationwide with the following benefits. First, through the establishment of a national framework on mobile number portability, mobile subscribers will be empowered to carry their cell phone numbers for life, even if they change mobile service providers. It will also allow them to keep the same cell phone number when switching from one postpaid to a prepaid subscription and vice versa. Second, this bill will also remove interconnection fees and charges, courtesy of Senator Ping Lacson, shouldered by the mobile subscribers when they make domestic calls or send text messages to subscribers of other networks. Lastly, this bill calls for the unlocking, upon demand, and free of charge of the mobile telephone handset of a subscriber who has complied with all the number porting requirements. Mr. President and esteemed colleagues, with the Lifetime Cell Phone Number Act, the shackles are finally off. We will finally have the freedom to leave our service providers, whose services are so poor that we no longer get our money's worth. When this bill is finally signed into law, we will not have to stick around anymore and put up with poor service just because we do not want to lose our numbers, which are now part of our digital identity. This new paradigm of consumer mobility will usher in a new era of free and fair competition in the telco industry, in unison with the start of operations of the third telco player. All in all, this measure promotes consumer welfare and fosters freedom of choice, and it will also result in significant savings for the mobile subscriber. We are confident that this will result in better consumer outcomes for mobile subscribers who deserve quality and affordable services in exchange for their hard-earned money. Mr. President, the comprehensive details of the disagreeing provisions are reflected in a joint explanatory statement With the permission of the body, I move that the joint explanatory statement on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Number 1636 and House Bill Number 7652 be read in toto into the records, and that the Bicameral Conference Committee report be ratified. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, with that,
Yes.
I move that we adopt and ratify the Bicameral Conference Committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 1636 and House Bill number 7652. I so move.
Any objection? Chair hears none. The Bicameral Conference Committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill 1636 and House Bill 7652 is hereby adopted and ratified.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move that we transfer from the calendar of ordinary business to the calendar of special orders, Senate Bill number 2064, under Committee Report number 492. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, so transferred.
Mr. President, I move that, with the consent of our colleagues, I move that we consider Senate Bill number 2064.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration of the measure is in order.
May we ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure?
Secretary will read the title of the measure.
Senate Bill Number 2064, an act amending Section 15 of Republic Act Number 8436 as amended by Republic Act Number 9369.
Mr. President, to sponsor the measure, may we ask the chair of the committee, the distinguished Senator Aquilino Coco Pimentel, to be recognized to deliver his sponsorship speech, Mr. President.
Senator Aquilino Pimentel III is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues in the Senate, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon to all. I am honored to speak before this chamber to seek your full support for the passage of Senate Bill number 2064, an act amending Section 15 of Republic Act number 8436 as amended by Republic Act number 9369. The proposed bill, in substitution of Senate Bills numbers 100 and 8093, is authored by this representation and our other esteemed colleagues, Senators Richard Gordon and Laila De Lima. This bill seeks to reconcile what purports to be conflicting provisions of the Omnibus Election Code and Republic Act number 9369, or the Automated Election Law, in order to correct the anomalous treatment of premature campaigning and introduce more parity in the playing field as far as our future elections are concerned. The prohibited act of premature campaigning is defined under Section 80 in relation to Section 79 of the Omnibus Election Code as any person engaging in an election campaign or partisan political activity designed to promote the election or defeat of a particular candidate outside the campaign period. For a candidate, violating this provision disqualifies him or her from continuing as a candidate, or if he or she has been elected, from holding the office that he or she aspired for. The code defined a candidate as any person aspiring for or seeking an elective office who has filed a certificate of candidacy by himself or through an accredited political party, a groupment, or coalition of parties. In 2007, however, Republic Act number 9369, or the Automated Election Law, was enacted, and Section 15, paragraph 3 thereof states that any person who files his certificate of candidacy shall only be considered as a candidate at the start of the campaign period for which he filed the certificate of candidacy. And unlawful acts or omissions applicable to a candidate shall take effect only upon the start of the aforesaid campaign period. The passage of this legal provision scrapped the concept of premature campaigning. Because Section 15 of RA 9369 defines a person who files a certificate of candidacy as a candidate only from the start of the campaign period, no person, whether or not a candidate, can ever be guilty of premature campaigning. The reason for this is that outside the campaign period, when premature campaigning is supposed to be committed, no candidate yet exists. That is why it has been said there is no prohibited premature campaigning in the Philippines. Did Congress, in enacting RA 9369, intend to abolish or repeal Section 80 of the Omnibus Election Code that prohibits campaigning before the start of the campaign period? It did not. Section 80 remains in the statute books, and RA 9369 did not directly or indirectly touch it. The basis for this is found in the case of Rosalinda A. Peñera. Peñera and Andanar ran for mayor of Santa Monica, Surigao del Norte during the May 14, 2011 elections. Peñera's political party held a motorcade preceding the filing of her certificate of candidacy, announcing her candidacy for mayor. Because of this, Andanar filed a petition to disqualify Peñera for engaging in premature campaigning. On September 11, 2009, the Supreme Court, in the said case of Rosalinda Peñera versus Commission on Elections and Edgar Andanar, disqualified Peñera from holding office as mayor of Santa Monica and held that Section 80 of the Omnibus Election Code remains relevant and applicable despite Section 15 of RA 8436 as amended, which makes premature campaigning possible to commit. However, on November 25, 2009, acting on the motion for reconsideration of Peñera, the Supreme Court granted the said motion and pronounced that a candidate is liable for an election offense only for acts done during the campaign period, not before. The law is clear as daylight. Any election offense that may be committed by a candidate under any election law cannot be committed before the start of the campaign period. The High Court further explained that it is Congress that has laid down the law and that the court has no power to ignore the clear and express mandate of the law that any person who files his certificate of candidacy within the filing period shall only be considered a candidate at the start of the campaign period for which he filed the certificate of candidacy. Nonetheless, in a dissenting opinion, Justice Roberto Abad said that Congress could not be presumed to have written a ridiculous rule. It is safe to assume that in enacting RA 9369, Congress did not intend to decriminalize illegal acts that candidates and non-candidates alike could commit prior to the campaign period. Taking cue from the foregoing pronouncements of the Supreme Court, your Committee on Electoral Reforms and People's Participation considered Senate Bill number 100, authored by Senator Richard Gordon, and Senate Bill number 1893, authored by Senator Laila de Lima, in consultation with stakeholders, re-examined the wisdom of the present laws and arrived at our proposed legislation that seeks to amend Section 15 of RA 8436 as amended by RA 9369 by reverting to the old definition, making a person a candidate at the moment he files a certificate of candidacy within the period provided by the Commission, and thus can commit unlawful pre-campaign acts. Our proposal is anchored on the fact that when a person files a certificate of candidacy, he is, for all intents and purposes, declaring to the world that he is aspiring to be elected to a public office. At the time of such filing, such a person is a candidate, plain and simple. Once we amend Section 15 of RA 9369, the unlawful act of premature campaigning will be applicable to a candidate and shall take effect upon the filing of his certificate of candidacy instead of at the start of the campaign period. This will liberate the voting public from the anomalous spectacle of candidates who are prematurely campaigning and yet cannot be made accountable for their acts, which are potential or possible violations of our election laws. Mr. President, my esteemed colleagues, on account of the foregoing reasons, I most respectfully seek the support of everyone for the immediate passage of this proposed legislation. Maraming salamat po.
Majority Leader. Senator Gordon, you are recognized.
Mr. President, just a very short co-sponsorship on this very vital piece of legislation, which I've always been advocating for the last several years. I rise to express, Mr. President, my full support for and request to be a co-sponsor of a Senate bill which I co-authored, contained in Committee Report number 492, also known as an act amending Section 15 of Republic Act number 8436 as amended by Republic Act number 9369. I would like to congratulate Senator Aquilino Coco Pimentel and the committee for capably spearheading the passage of this important measure. The barrage of political advertisements on television, the radio and other forms of media, and the obvious electioneering or campaigning by many candidates even before the campaign period, in fact, after filing their certificates of candidacy in the previous cycle of elections, were too much to be ignored. This would have constituted the election offense of premature campaigning if it were not for Piñera versus Comelec and Andanar, GR number 181613, November the 25th, 2009. In interpreting the law, the Supreme Court ruled that a candidate is liable for election offenses only upon the start of the campaign period, thus effectively decriminalizing premature campaigning. The unfair repercussions of this rule are far and wide. It propagates political inequality as it unduly favors rich or popular candidates over poor or less popular candidates. Mr. President, if we have had bad governments in the past, it's only because we have allowed the powerful at yung malalakas sa loob to do what they want in violation of the law, Mr. President. Number two, it also negates transparency and accountability, as it shamelessly excludes such premature campaigning from the regulation of campaign finance and the limitations on election campaign and expenditures. Hindi po kinakount yung premature campaigning expenses at ang nangyayari, yun lang actual period of campaigning, which again violates the thrust of the Constitution and the law, Mr. President. Kawawa naman talaga yung walang kaya na hindi makapag-advertise, tapos yung mga may kaya, bira lang ng advertisement at ang nangyayari, nai-influence ang tao. Elections, Mr. President, is a matter of choice. Intelligent choice, if I may add. And that is why it is important na we drop the boom on this ridiculous situation where we enact a law and then it is interpreted in a way that it makes us all look ridiculous, that it is a dead letter law, Mr. President. In his dissenting opinion, and I'm backed up by jurisprudence here, in Penara versus Comelec and Andanar, Justice Abad said that Congress could not be presumed to have written a ridiculous rule. Mr. President, may I ask that the second Congress be, the second session, Senate session ongoing, be told that, that there is an important piece of legislation that we're approving right now? Especially my friend, I will not mention the name anymore, Mr. President.
Will the other session please adjourn? Go ahead, Senator Gordon.
President, I apologize for talking, for interrupting while they're talking, Mr. President. Now, Mr. President, again, I would like to say, in the dissenting opinion in Penara versus Comelec and Andanar, Justice Abad said that Congress could not be presumed, and I quote, to have written a ridiculous rule, close quote. I thus filed Senate Bill number 100, which was referred to the Committee on Electoral Reforms and People's Participation, and now among those reported out in Committee Report number 2064, to correct this anomaly by amending the language in Republic Act number 9369 to clarify that persons are considered by law to be candidates upon filing of their certificates of candidacy. Mr. President, if I may just add a little bit of an extemporaneous manifestation here, Mr. President, this also includes the law on, for example, publication of surveys. Malayo pa po, nakakalamang na yung nakalagay doon sa surveys. Hindi ko po inaalis yun. I come from Procter & Gamble, and we conducted surveys, and that was done to improve our products, Mr. President. But to advertise, in effect, is obviating the choice. And this is my own opinion, Mr. President. I'm sure there are others who do not share this, but I am not afraid to state this because at times we are practically stampeded by the surveys, and if you're weak in the surveys, we are stampeded into engaging into expensive TV commercials, which at last the last time we campaigned, cost 850,000 per 30 seconds. So, the racket is they'll say, oh, mahina ka sa survey, magpa-advertise ka. So, it's
850
almost act like 1 plus 1 equals 2 for them, Mr. President.
850,000 plus VAT and tax.
That's correct, Mr. President. So, I'm not against that. You know, we should be allowed to advertise, but it should be done fairly to level the playing field. There are many poor people who are far more qualified than some of us here, present company excluded, Mr. President. I just want to state this because, Mr. President, it's about time that we be serious about campaign finance and campaign advertising and premature campaigning. Again, I congratulate and thank Senator Pimentel for sponsoring the important measure. I got his attention, Mr. President, because he was talking, and now I got his attention because, because I think Senator Escudero was already interpolating. Mr. President, I thank you for your patience and for your for the time. Thank you, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Congratulations. Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 2064.
Any objection? There being none, consideration is suspended.
Mr. President, I move that we transfer from the calendar of ordinary business to calendar of special orders Senate Bill number 2098 under Committee Report number 499. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, so transferred.
Mr. President, I move that we consider Senate Bill number 2098 under Committee Report number 499.
Any objection? There being none, consideration is in order.
We will ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure.
Secretary will read the title of the measure.
Senate Bill number 2098, an act ensuring the continuous and uninterrupted transmission and distribution of electricity, the protection of the integrity and reliability of power lines, and providing penalties for violations thereof.
Mr. President, may we recognize the sponsor of the measure, our distinguished colleague, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, to sponsor the measure.
Senator Gatchalian is recognized.
Maraming salamat, Mr. President. Magandang hapon po muli sa ating mga kasama. Mr. President, honorable colleagues in the Senate, good afternoon. Electricity is one of the most important technological innovations developed by man. It has become an integral part of our lives, one we often take for granted but cannot live without. Para sa mga ordinaryong mamayan, higit natin naiintindihan ang kahalagaan ng kuryente sa mga sandaling pansamantala itong nawawala. Sino nga ba ang sa atin ang hindi nagpapanik kapag nakikita nating low battery na ang mga cellphones natin at kasalukuyang may brownout? Sino ba ang hindi nabibwisit kapag biglang namamatayan tayo ng laptop o computer dahil sa walang kuryente habang may tinatapos, tapos malalaman mo pagkatapos na hindi pala na-save ang dokumentong ilang oras mo nang isinusulat? O di kaya ay kapag kailangan mo ng pera pero hindi ka makapag-withdraw dahil walang kuryente ang buong syudad. Indeed, nowadays, losing electric power even for just a short time feels like going back to the dark ages because we need electricity to communicate. We need electricity to travel. We need electricity for us to live normal lives and for society to function normally. Unfortunately, Filipinos are thrown back into dark ages far too often due to obstructions caused to power lines. These obstructions include activities near power lines such as burning of waste and other materials, building of structures, and intentional planting of trees, as well as refusing access to power lines for maintenance and repair. This year alone, we already had 168 instances of power outages, totaling 1,426 hours due to right-of-way issues with transmission lines. This is equal to more than 1.5 million kilowatt hours of unserved energy because individuals refuse entry to transmission operator to conduct clearance operations for vegetation management. This is alarming because the year is not over yet, and already we have almost thrice the duration of outages compared to 2017 at 565 hours, and almost 4 times the duration outages compared to 2016 at 396 hours. All these outages were due to right-of-way issues with transmission lines. To address this issue, Mr. President, the measure I am sponsoring today will ensure the conveyance of electricity from power plants all the way to the end users, consumers, businesses, and vital installations in the country will be uninterrupted. Recognizing the continuous conveyance of electricity as a matter of national security and as central to economic development, Senate Bill number 2098 under Committee Report number 499 provides that the power line corridor, including the land beneath, the airspaces surrounding, and the area traversed by power lines, including its horizontal, vertical, and similar clearances requirements, shall at all times be kept clear and free from any obstructions, dangerous structures, hazardous activities, or any similar circumstances that shall impede the continuous flow of electricity. This power line corridor shall be determined by the Board of Electrical Engineering and approved by the Department of Energy in accordance with the Philippine Electrical Code. The proposed bill gives power line owners and operators the right, subject to proper privacy safeguards, to enter property to prevent and remove any obstruction, conduct maintenance, inspection, repair, and restoration activities, stop, prevent, or prohibit the conduct of hazardous activities, conduct trimming, pruning, cutting, and clearing of plants and trees, as well as gathering, collecting, and removing of timber without securing prior clearance or permit from the Department of Environment and Natural Resources and the Philippine Coconut Authority whenever applicable, and perform other analogous acts or activities which prevent and remove any power line obstruction. The proposed measure also penalizes prohibited acts, including the planting of tall growing plants, the construction of hazardous improvements, and the conduct of any hazardous activities, all within the power line corridor. Moreover, the prevention or refusal to allow the entry of duly authorized agents of the power line owner or operator in the performance of their duties is considered a prohibited act. The bill further outlines the duties and responsibilities of the power line owners and operators in the prevention and removal of any obstructions to power lines in public property. When it comes to private property, the bill highlights the collaborative role of private property owners and power line owner and operator by giving the former the duty to prevent power line obstruction and inform, coordinate, and assist the latter in the removal of such obstruction. The power line owner and operator are also required to inform, educate, and communicate to individuals and communities the danger of existing power line obstruction, the urgency of removing them, and the manner preventing them. These power line owners and operators are further authorized to seek the assistance of local government units, the Philippine National Police, and the Armed Forces of the Philippines in the discharge of their duties. To illustrate how this bill will boost the reliability of the power grid, Mr. President, let us remember what happened in Zamboanga a couple of years ago. Now, plants may seem harmless, but the power failure that struck the entire Zamboanga Peninsula in September of 2016 was caused by banana trees planted intentionally and maliciously along transmission lines. This caused a line-to-ground fault that tripped high voltage line, according to the transmission operator. This incident caused the entire Zamboanga Peninsula to lose power, including areas served by 7 electric co-ops. The transmission operator explained that it conducted right-of-way clearing activities in that area way back in February 2016, except for a small patch of land between 2 towers located on the property of a landowner who refused access for maintenance activities. Because of such refusal, the power failure in Zamboanga happened. If passed into law, this bill will prevent such occurrences from happening again in the future. Mr. President, if there is to be any energy-related lesson to be learned from the many typhoons that have struck our country, it is that keeping power line corridors clear and free from any obstruction or potential debris will minimize the risk of power lines getting damaged during natural calamities. This, in turn, would lessen the time it would take to repair damaged lines and restore power to affected areas. As the adage goes, prevention is always better than cure. With the approval of this measure, we shall put in place a mechanism that will allow for undisturbed maintenance and rehabilitation of transmission, sub-transmission, and distribution line. With this in mind, I hope for the immediate passage of this measure. Thank you, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, for our colleagues to study the measure further, we move to suspend consideration of the same.
Motion to suspend. Any objection? There being none, consideration is suspended.
Mr. President, I move that we transfer the calendar of special orders, our calendar of ordinary business for special orders, Senate Bill number 2038 under Committee Report number 484. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, so transferred.
Mr. President, I move that we consider Senate Bill number 2038.
Any objection? There being none, consideration is in order.
May we ask the Senate Secretary to read the title?
Secretary will read the title of the measure.
Senate Bill number 2038, an act increasing the penalty for overloading of passengers in public utility vehicles and for other purposes.
Mr. President, may we recognize the sponsor, Senator J.V. or Joseph Victor Ejercito, to sponsor the measure.
Senator J.B. Ejercito is recognized to sponsor the measure.
Mr. President, I would like to sponsor Senate Bill number 2038 under Committee Report number 484, increasing the penalty of overloading of passengers in public utility vehicles. First, Mr. President, allow me to thank the chairperson of the Committee on Public Services, Senator Grace Poe, for giving us the opportunity to hear and sponsor this important measure. Mr. President, the World Health Organization reported that about 1.25 million people die each year as a result of road traffic crashes, while 90% of the world's fatalities on the road occur in low and middle-income countries. The report revealed that one of the risk factors of road fatalities is the inadequate law enforcement of traffic laws, among others. While the leading cause of road accidents is driver error, it cannot be denied that violation of traffic rules and regulations contributes to this factor. Mr. President, isa nga sa mga violation na pinagwawalang bahala ang overloading. Hindi na bago sa ating makakita ng mga bus sa EDSA na punong-puno at nagsisiksikang pasahero, ang iba nakatayo na mismo at malapit sa pinto. Delikado ito lalo na sa mga biyaheng probinsya at paakyat ng mga matarik na bundok. In 2017, there were 5,669 overloaded PUVs apprehended. And for the first half of this year, we already have 3,238 cases of overloading. Mr. President, an overloaded vehicle is less stable and incurs additional risk for other road users. In 2014 alone, Mr. President, there were 317 cases of overloading accidents in highways. Throughout this year, road mishaps involving overloaded PUVs claimed the lives of many people across the country, particularly in the mountainous areas. In September, 14 passengers of an overloaded jeepney, many of them senior citizens who were about to get their monthly pension, were killed on their vehicle when their vehicle fell into the bottom of a 200-meter ravine. It appears that one of the factors for the crash was that the jeepney was overloaded. In July, an overloaded jeepney crashed along the highway in Pagadian, Zamboanga del Sur, leaving 7 passengers dead and 64 others injured. The helpless victims were beneficiaries of the government's Pantawid Pamilya Pilipino program, or 4Ps, and were supposed to withdraw their cash assistance from a bank in Pagadian. April last year, a minibus bound for Ilocos Sur fell into a 100-feet ravine in Nueva Ecija and claimed over 30 lives. It was then revealed that the bus was overloaded with 77 passengers when it can only carry up to 45 passengers. October 2017, 5 people were killed while 29 others were injured when a passenger van figured in a crash in Cagayan. It was revealed that the van was overloaded and overspeeding. Mr. President, ito po ay nakakalungkot at nakakabahala. Bus, jeep, van, anumang uri na PUVs, maaari mag-overload. Mr. President, while we acknowledge that buses and jeepneys, no matter how overloaded, remain the primary transportation for Filipinos who have no choice but to take cheap mass transportation, we have to take into account public safety. According to the Civil Code, common carriers, from the nature of their business and for the reasons of public policy, are bound to observe extraordinary diligence for the safety of the passengers transported by them. A common carrier is bound to carry the passengers safely as far as human care and foresight can provide, using the utmost diligence of very cautious persons. Why do these violations continue when it is clear in the Land Transportation and Traffic Code that all vehicles shall only carry passengers within its registered carrying capacity? Perhaps, Mr. President, the penalties are too mild that they can just be ignored. Mr. President, the Land Transportation and Traffic Code set a penalty of 100 pesos for exceeding the registered carrying capacity, while under the Joint Administrative Order number 2014, series of 01 of LTFRB and LTO, operators of any PUVs found to be overloading will be imposed a fine of 1,000 pesos. Mr. President, this is too low compared to the risk it poses on the road. To ensure strict and uniform implementation of the law, we need to review and update the Land Transportation and Traffic Code. Mr. President, this law is half a century old law enacted in 1964, which is why I am proposing to this chamber the passage of Senate Bill 2038 to impose stiffer penalties against overloaded PUVs and criminalize the violation of exceeding a PUV's registered carrying capacity when it results in the death of any passenger. For the first offense, penalty of 50,000 pesos, including suspension of franchise. For the second offense, 250,000 pesos, including suspension of franchise. For the third offense, 1 million pesos and revocation of franchise. In the event that fatalities are involved in an accident, those accountable for the deaths should be subjected to up to 6 years in prison correctional. To have a clear standard of measurement, we are mandating that the DOTR to determine the registered carrying capacity of a vehicle, which shall include the measured weight of a motor vehicle plus the maximum allowable seating and standing capacity of the motor vehicle. Mr. President, ang panukalang batas na ito ay para sa kaligtasan ng mga pasahero. Hindi natin dapat pagwalang bahala ang bilang ng mga namamatay dahil sa aksidente na dulot ng overloading. Panahon na para itaas ang parusa sa mga overloaded na PUVs. Mr. President, I'm seeking support of my esteemed colleagues for the passage of this measure. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, for our colleagues to study the measure further, move to suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 2038. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, consideration is suspended.
I believe, Mr. President, Senator Gordon would like to be recognized.
Senator Richard Gordon is recognized.
Mr. President, I would like to reconsider the approval of the Bicameral Conference Committee report because upon perusal of the...
On Senate Bill number 1753.
That's correct, Mr. President. Thank you. Of the enrolled copy, there were some typos and some very major provisions that were not copied in the original law, which we adopted, Mr. President, but was not reflected in the enrolled bill, which was approved in the Bicameral Conference Committee, Mr. President.
When did we approve the bicameral report?
October 10, Mr. President.
We need the consent of the chamber.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the permission of the body and our colleagues, we seek to reconsider the Bicameral Conference Committee on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 1753 and House Bill number 2158.
Any objection? Senator Frank Drilon, the Minority Leader, is recognized.
Mr. President, this is not an objection. In fact, I am standing up in support of the motion of Senator Gordon. Apparently what happened here, Mr. President, is that the Bicameral Conference Committee report, which we signed as members of the Senate panel to the Bicameral Conference Committee, that Bicameral Conference Committee report, which we signed and submitted to the chamber for approval, which the chamber approved, did not contain all the agreements that the two panels actually agreed upon during the actual conference. And therefore, the Bicameral Conference Committee report was erroneous. And this bicameral conference committee report was the basis of the enrolled copy, which the Senate President may have already signed. And therefore, it is good that this was caught before we sent it to the President for his consideration. But I am standing up, first in support of the motion, that we should reconvene the convene the bicameral conference committee so that the bicameral conference committee report can be corrected. But for the second reason, we believe that this teaches us a lesson, that the Secretariat should be more exacting in its, and more diligent in checking and vigilant in checking the correctness of what is presented before the chamber. We are not expected to scrutinize every phrase, every page of the bicameral conference committee report. We rely in good faith on the competence and the the diligence of the Secretariat. So I am standing up to bring this to the attention of the Secretary of the Senate, who has supervision over the Secretariat, to make sure that this is not repeated. Mr. President, by the way, I'm making this manifestation because this is not the first time that this has happened in the years past. Similar things happened. It was not just brought to the open session, but I know for a fact that there were similar incidents that happened, not necessarily in the BICAM report, but in some other reports that were approved by the chamber. So I am standing up. The second point, apart from supporting the motion of Senator Gordon, is for the Secretariat to exercise more diligence in supervising our committee secretaries in this particular very sensitive issue that is being presented, because we don't want a law that does not reflect correctly what the chamber has decided upon. Thank you, Mr. President.
That is absolutely correct, Mr. President.
Yes, with that, the Secretariat is directed to note the manifestations and act accordingly
Yes,
to
Mr.
what
President.
has been aired by Senator Gordon and by the Minority Leader, Senator Drilon. Senator Gordon, you
Yes, Mr.
wish to
President, I just
continue?
want to commend Senator Drilon for his kind comments, because I was very concerned. I've spoken about this no less than the Secretary of the Senate and the Director for the committees here, and this is very disconcerting, and we rely on the many industrious people among our committee secretariat, but once in a while, maybe out of sheer volume of work, or they make mistakes. But that cannot be an excuse, Mr. President. If they need help, they should ask from the Secretariat for assistance so they could actually review whether, in fact, the provisions thereof reflect the true intention of the Senate and the lower house, in this particular case, a bicameral conference committee report. So I join hands with Senator Drilon, and I'm sure the rest of the Senate, I can see many of our colleagues are nodding their heads in agreement, and that is all I'd like to make, Mr. President, and I hope that this will not happen again. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, because of the time elapsed, that is the reason the presiding officer wanted to make sure that we had the consent of the chamber to do
Yes.
this. And
why, Mr.
it is a
President-
unanimous consent. Any objection? Chair hears none. Motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. That's why in my motion, I sought the permission of the chamber and with unanimous consent. Mr. President, with that, with the reconsideration, we move with the permission of the chamber to reconvene the bicameral conference committee on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 1753 and House Bill number 1258. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, so reconvened.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration House Bill number 8302. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, consideration of the measure is in order. 8302.
May we recognize Senator Grace Poe to sponsor and to, I believe it is
Continue
already,
sponsorship.
I believe there's no longer any member who would like to interpolate, Mr. President. I move to close the period of interpellation.
Yes, we were in the period of interpellation. There is a motion to close the period of interpellation. Any objection? Chair hears none. Period of interpellation is closed.
Mr. President, I move that we open the period of amendments.
Any objection? There being none, period of amendments is open.
Mr. President, we recognize the sponsor, Senator Grace Poe, for amendments. And I believe later Senator Risa also would like to propose individual amendments. So for
Senator
now,
Grace
Senator
Poe.
Grace Poe.
Senator Poe is recognized.
Mr. President, may I present the following committee amendments of the Committee on Public Services on House Bill 8302. On page 2, line 8, after the word manner, delete the comma and the conjunction, and in lieu thereof, insert a period. I so move.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Amendment is adopted.
On the same page, line 9, after the word assignees, delete the comma and the paragraph whenever required to do so by the Energy Regulatory Commission, ERC, until line 15, and in lieu thereof, insert the phrase to continuously improve its facilities and employ the latest technology and innovations that promote efficiency and is beneficial to consumers. It shall comply with the standards set by the Energy Regulatory Commission, such as those found in the Philippine Distribution Code, its resolution, and other issuances. The grantee shall also implement measures required by the Energy Regulatory Commission, the Department of Energy, or their legal successors, or any other government agency concerned to modify, improve, upgrade, and change such facilities, systems, or the management and maintenance thereof. I so move.
Period.
Period. I so move.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Amendment is adopted.
On the same page, lines 18 and 19, delete the word easement and replace it with right of way. Also,
Facilities or right of ways. Right of way. That line first?
on the,
No.
to repeat, sir.
Go ahead.
On the same page, lines 18 and 19, delete the word easement and replace it with right of way. I so
On
move.
line 18
Yes, sir.
and also on line 19.
Lines 18 and
They
19.
both contain easements. You're replacing both easements with right of way.
Yes, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, motion is, the amendment is adopted.
Also, on line 19, after the word compensation, insert the phrase, to the grantee, considering costs incurred to accommodate and administer the use of the grantee's facilities by such parties, the ERC shall resolve cases of dispute or disagreement between and among parties. Period. I so move.
Therefore, you're replacing line 20 and 21.
It's in line 19.
Yes, you're replacing the,
That will happen, sir,
all
in
right.
the next one.
any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
On the same page, line 20, after the word between, insert the words and among.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
On page 3, line 1, delete the title of section 4 and replace it with ingress and egress. Egress.
Ingress and egress. Any objection?
I so
There
move.
being none, amendment is adopted.
On page 4, line 7, I'm sorry, again. On page 4, after line 7, insert a new paragraph which shall read as follows. The grantee is required to undergo a competitive selection process, CSP, in securing power supply agreements. I so move.
Any objection? Chair hears none, amendment is adopted.
On the same page, after line 25, insert a new paragraph which shall read as follows. The grantee shall strictly comply with the system loss cap prescribed by the ERC. Period. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
On page 5, after line 3, insert a new paragraph which shall read as follows. The grantee shall reduce the duration and frequency of interruptions in its network, and in that regard, shall observe the system's average frequency index and system average interruption duration index imposed by the ERC. Period. I so move.
Any objection? Amendment is adopted.
On the same page, after the preceding amendment, insert a new provision which shall read as follows. Section 8. Election of independent directors. The board of the grantee shall have independent directors constituting at least 20% of its total membership. These directors must be elected by a majority of the total number of outstanding shares entitled to vote. An independent director is a person who, apart from shareholdings and fees received from the corporation, is independent of management and free from any business or other relationship which could reasonably be perceived to materially interfere with the exercise of independent judgment in carrying out the responsibilities as a director. Period. I so move.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Amendment is adopted.
On the same page, line 19, after the word services, delete
Would you like to renumber then the sections? Renumber the sections?
in the end, we will just propose that an
All right,
omnibus
you
to
will do that
renumber.
towards the end. All right, you may proceed.
On the same page, line 19, after the word services, delete the comma and replace it with a period and capitalize letter T in the article, the.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Amendment is adopted.
On page 6, line 1, after the word previously, delete the word used and in lieu thereof insert a comma and the word currently. Also on the same line, delete the phrase without legal authority or franchise. Period. I so move.
How will this read now?
One minute
Previously,
suspension, Mr. President, while we look for the exact.
session suspended.
Ready to resume, Mr.
Session is resumed.
It will read on page 6, line 1, after the word previously, so it will read previously, currently, or actually used, comma, or intended to be used, or have been abandoned, unused, or underutilized,
All right, et cetera, et cetera. All right.
etc.
Any objection? The chair is none. Amendment is adopted.
On the same page, line 7, delete the word further.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
On the same page, line 8, insert a comma after the word expropriation. Also on the same line, insert a comma after the word thereafter. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
On the same page, line 10, delete the phrase subject to the order of the court of an. And in lieu thereof, insert the words of the full.
Of the?
Full.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
On the same page, line 11, delete the words equivalent to and replace it with the preposition of. Also on the same line, after
Amount
the word,
of the assessed. All right, go ahead.
also on the same line, after the word property, insert the words or properties and delete the preposition for, and on line 12, delete the phrase purposes of taxation. I so move.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Amendment is adopted.
On the same page, line 15, between the words of and issues, insert the word other. Also on the same line, after the word court, insert a comma and the phrase, including the final determination of the amount or just compensation to be paid, the court may appoint the ERC as a trial commissioner in determining the amount of just compensation. The court may consider the tax declarations, current audited financial statements, and rate-setting applications of the owner or owners of the property or properties being expropriated in order to determine their assessed value. I so move.
This is all after line 15 and all before line 16.
Yes, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, motion is adopted.
On the same page, delete lines 16 to 18.
All right, any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
On the same page, line 24, after the word renewal, insert a comma and delete the conjunction or. Also on the same line, after the word extension, insert a comma and the words or revocation. I so move.
Renewal, extension, or revocation. The comma after extension is unnecessary. Editorial. Anyway, subject to style. Any objection? Chair is none. Amendment is adopted.
On page 7, after line 2, insert a new sentence which shall read as follows. This franchise may be revoked by Congress when the public interest so required or when the grantee fails to reasonably comply with regulatory standards. I so move.
Any objection? Chair is none. Amendment is adopted.
On the same page, line 26, before the word provided, insert the phrase provided that any grantee shall notify the Congress in writing of any sale or transfer of its shares less than the controlling interest. Also on the same line, after the word provided and the comma, insert the word further. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
Issue less than the controlling interest or more? Okay. On page 8, line 5, after the words offer to, insert the words the public specifically. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
On the same page, line 12, before the word non-compliance, insert a new sentence which shall read as follows. The holdings of persons natural or juridical, including directors, officers, stockholders, and related interests in the grantee and its respective holding company, if any, shall not exceed 25% of the voting shares of stock unless the utility or the company holding the shares or its controlling stockholders are already listed in the Philippine Stock Exchange. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
On the same page, after line 13, insert a new provision which shall read as follows. Section 16, Transition of Operations. In the public interest and to ensure uninterrupted supply of electricity, Panay Electric Company Incorporated, PECO, shall in the interim be authorized to operate the existing distribution system within the franchise area, as well as implement its existing power supply agreements with generation companies that had been provisionally or finally approved by the Energy Regulatory Commission until the establishment or acquisition by the grantee of its own distribution system and its complete transition towards full operations as determined by the ERC, which period shall in no case exceed 2 years from the grant of this legislative franchise. Upon compliance with its rules, the ERC shall grant PECO the necessary Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity, CPCN, covering such interim period. The applicable generation rate shall be the provisional or final rate approved by the ERC. During such interim period, PECO shall be required to settle the full amount which ERC has directed to refund to its customers in connection with all cases filed against it which have been finally resolved by the ERC. To minimize the length of the transition period, ERC and all agencies issuing the requisite licenses shall prioritize all applications relevant to the establishment and operation of the distribution system under its franchise. The grantee shall, as far as practicable and if qualified, accord preference to hiring former employees of PECO upon commencement of business operations. An information campaign and dissemination in the franchise areas regarding public services and operations shall be made to all covered end users by the grantee. I so move.
Session is suspended. Session is resumed. Any objection to the proposed amendment of the sponsor? On line, after line 13 of page 8. Any objection? Chair is none. Motion is adopted.
On page 9, after line 13, insert a new paragraph which shall read as follows. 1 year from the grant of this franchise and every 5 years thereafter, the ERC shall conduct a comprehensive assessment of the grantee's operations and its compliance with the conditions imposed hereunder and shall submit a report to Congress. The grantee shall transmit to the ERC all information and documents necessary to complete such assessment. I so move.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Amendment is adopted.
On page 1, in the title of the bill, after the word Iloilo, insert the phrase, "and to ensure continuity and uninterrupted supply of electricity and similar public services in the said area, period." I so move.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted. Would you like
Renumber
to-
the sections
Yes.
accordingly.
Motion to renumber. Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
Mr. President,
Yes, Senator Poe.
just before I entertain suggestions for individual amendments, I'd like to express my gratitude to the ones that help us with this very contentious and a little bit unorthodox bill franchise. I would like to thank Senator Sherwin Gatchalian and the Committee on Energy. Of course, the very strong advocate for Iloilo, our minority leader, Senator Drilon, and also Senator Zubiri, who provided also guidance, and of course, and helped me because he was also an expert in, he was an expert actually in public services during his time in Congress, and the Senate President himself for reminding us to look very closely at all of these provisions. So thank you very much.
Mr. President, we are very happy that we're able to assist the Honorable Gentlelady from Iloilo and the Republic of the Philippines for the passage or the crafting of this measure. Rest assured, all the amendments that were placed in there will give our people in Iloilo the assurance that there will be a continuous supply of electricity and no interruption will take place during this interim period. Mr. President, I believe Senator Risa Ontiveros has a proposed amendment. So with that, we close the period of committee amendments to open the period of individual amendments.
Any objection? There being none, period of individual amendments. Senator Risa Ontiveros
Sorry,
is
this,
recognized.
yes, opening of the period of individual amendments.
Yes.
Mr. President, I'd like to comment. The majority leader said from the Republic of the Philippines. Thank you for acknowledging, sir. That I'm from the Republic of the Philippines.
All right. Senator Ontiveros.
Thank you, Mr. President. Briefly, I'd like to thank Chairperson Grace and the other members of the committee for addressing the issues raised during the public hearing vis-a-vis managing the transition from one franchisee to another and, as has been stated, ensuring the continuity of service for the people of Iloilo City. However, I think we should likewise ensure that the welfare of employees who are not retained by the new franchisee is protected. Therefore, Mr. President, good sponsor, I'd like to propose a single amendment to append the following line to Section 16, second to the last sentence.
Section 16.
Yes, Mr.
What
President.
page is that? Page 8.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Page 8, to append the following line, which would read, the grantee and PECO shall jointly ensure that employees not retained receive all separation and retirement benefits they are entitled to by law. I so move, Mr. President.
What line would you like that incorporated? You're talking of Section 16. What line would you want that?
Yes, Mr. President. I cannot point out the particular line right now, Mr. President, because I believe this would be appended to a committee amendment that the good chairperson has just introduced. So I don't have the new line yet.
Perhaps subject to style, Mr. President, where...
Subject to style, perhaps, after line 24.
That would be...
Separate paragraph.
Yes, a separate paragraph. Oo, meron. Okay.
What does the sponsor say?
We will gladly accept it. It's very fair, Mr. President.
Accepted, subject to style.
Yes.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Amendment is adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, good sponsor.
Yeah, I'd like to thank, Mr. President, may I thank Senator Risa for ensuring also the welfare of those that may not be absorbed, that definitely by law, all of their benefits should be given to them. Thank you, ma'am.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, if with the permission of the sponsor, I'd like to also propose an individual amendment. Mr. President, with the permission of the sponsor, on page 4, after the words securing power supply agreements, that the line, this paragraph be inserted. And the rationale of this, Mr. President, is we support Senator Gatchalian's CSP, which is the competitive selection process. But however, if we follow the CSP process, it takes 6 months. And my worry is if we have to do that by the latter, with the full enforcement of procedure, mawawalan kontrata yung franchise area for 6 months, which means no power, no electricity. So we are proposing this, Mr. President, these wordings, if the sponsor will agree. And I also took this up with Senator Gatchalian. The word provided that, comma, the grantee, comma, immediately after the enactment of this act, comma, may be allowed to avail of the negotiated procurement of emergency power supply under the DOE Circular DC 2018-02-0003, provided further that, comma, such emergency contracts shall be only for a period of 1 year, and the rates must not be higher than the latest ERC-approved generation tariff for the same or similar technologies in the area, period. Mr.
What
President.
line would you want that?
Well, it will be inserted right after the words, this is securing power supply agreements. I think this was the amendment of Senator Sherwin on page 4 after line 7. On line 7 or line 8?
After line 7.
After line 7. That is
All right. Any objection? What does the sponsor say? Senator Gatchalian is recognized before the sponsor reacts.
Mr. Chair, as of now, the CSP rules in ERC is being finalized, and I think it will be released anytime soon. And Mr. President, what my fear is, if they come up with a different CSP rule, this might be this proposal might be affected because of that CSP rule, Mr. President. So what I propose, Mr. President, is also to include the ERC in the amendment, Mr. President.
How will it be read? May we ask the chair, the good sponsor, the good gentleman from the Energy Committee, Chair of the Energy Committee, how will it be read, Your Honor?
1 minute suspension, Mr.
May I ask for
President.
1 minute suspension?
Session is suspended.
Kasi baka po wala.
Ready to resume, Mr. President?
Session is resumed.
Yes, Mr. President, I believe the gentleman from Valenzuela has a proposal to my amendment, an amendment to my amendment.
Mr. President,
Yes, Senator Gatchalian.
the amendment to the amendment after the words DOE Circular DC 2018-02-0003 : I move to insert the words as revised or any subsequent circular, comma, rule, comma, or regulation issued by DOE or ERC allowing emergency procurement.
Editorial
Period.
proposal, you put a comma after 0003.
Yes, Mr. President.
Replace the colon with a comma, and then the proposed amendment that you have, and then a colon after the amendment.
Yes, Mr. President.
All right.
Correct.
Any objection? What does the sponsor say?
Mr. President, with the expert advice that I'm sure my colleague here has accepted also, if that will assure non-interruption of power, I will accept.
It's okay. It's safe.
It's accepted. Any objection? The chair hears none. The amendment is adopted.
With that, Mr. President, we have no further amendments. We move to close the period of amendments.
Any objection? There being done, period of amendments is closed.
With that, Mr. President, we'd like to move to approve on, with the permission of the body, move to approve on second reading House Bill number 8302. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Chair hears none. House Bill 8302 is approved on second reading.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I ask for a 1-minute suspension?
The chair
We
declares
suspend- Yeah,
a...
Mr. President, before we do so, we move to suspend consideration of House Bill number 8302.
Consideration of the measure is suspended. Chair declares a 5-minute Senate recess.
Session is resumed.
May we recognize Senator Frank Drilon, please?
The Senate Minority Floor Leader is recognized.
Mr. President, may we know how our vote was counted, or whether our vote was counted in the just approved more franchise, where we know from the Secretariat? There was a approval on second reading. May we know how we were registered insofar as the voting is concerned? Just for the record,
Just for the record. There was no objection, Mr. Minority Floor Leader.
yes, well, we want to register an abstention because we have abstained from the very start. So for the record, the vote should not include the vote of this representation. Record the vote of this representation as an abstention.
That's duly noted. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, we'd like to resume consideration. Senate Bill number 1823. This is an act further strengthening the office of the Solicitor General. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? Chair is none. Motion's carried.
We're still in the period of interpellation. May we recognize the Minority Floor Leader, the distinguished Senator Franklin Drilon, to interpolate the sponsor, Senator Richard Gordon.
The distinguished gentleman from Olongapo City, Senator Richard Gordon, is recognized, and to interpolate.
There's a request of a 1-minute suspension.
Session suspended.
Minority Floor Leader. Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed. The distinguished gentleman from Zambales, the Honorable Richard Gordon, is recognized to sponsor the measure and to interpolate. The Minority Floor Leader from the province of Iloilo is now recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will my good friend, the gentleman from Zambales and sponsor of Senate Bill 1823, yield the floor to a few questions on this very important measure?
Most definitely, Your Honor. I'd be privileged to answer your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Before we ask the question, before we avail of the period of interpellation, we would like to manifest, number one, that we welcome this measure because this gives us an opportunity to examine our structure of legal advice to the government in general. We have examined the measure. Let me manifest, Your Honor, that this representation is interested in making sure that the overlapping function that we see today on a very critical government service is straightened out in this bill. The matter of the salary structure and other benefits of the Office of the Solicitor General, I would leave that to the sound judgment of the sponsor and this chamber and maybe the Department of Budget and Management. So, and if I ask questions in that area, it is only to clarify what exactly the bill, what exactly is being granted to the, as benefits to the Solicitor General's office once, if this bill becomes law. So on that premise, Mr. President, I would repeat, we will, most of our questions will be on the issue of the mandate of the Department of Justice and the Solicitor General. Now, Mr. President, to start with, let me read on the record the pertinent provisions of Executive Order 292, or the Administrative Code, specifically Title 3, Chapter 1 on Justice. Section 1, Chapter 1, Title 3 of the Revised Administrative Code reads, and if I may put it in the record, it says Section 1, Declaration of Policy. It is the declared policy of the state to provide the government with a principal law agency which shall be both the legal counsel and the prosecution arm. I do not need to read the rest of the paragraph. Section 2 says, the department, which is the Department of Justice, shall carry out the policy declared in the preceding section. And under the powers and functions, to accomplish the mandate, under Section 3, powers and functions, to accomplish the mandate, the department shall have the following powers and functions. Number one, act as the principal law agency of the government and as legal counsel and representative thereof whenever so required. Number 7, provide legal services to the national government and its functionaries, including government-owned and controlled corporations and their subsidiaries. My first question, Mr. President, is, are we going to reinforce this mandate of the Department of Justice, and will the Department of Justice continue with this mandate, or are we changing the mandate of the Department of Justice when the bill is passed into law?
There's no change.
Because I noticed that if we are going to leave the bill and the committee report as is, I think you will have 2 counsels for the government of the Republic. That is the first policy issue that I wish the sponsor could respond to for the record.
Very well put, Your Honor. I think it can be answered by the fact that the same Administrative Code 1987, in Section 34, Chapter 12, Title 3, Book 4, determines the functions with more specificity. For example, number 1, represent the government in criminal and civil actions. On the other hand, the Department of Justice prosecutes offenders through the National Prosecution Service. But insofar as the OSG is concerned, they represent the government in criminal and civil actions, and they represent the government in the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals in all criminal proceedings. They represent the government and its officers in the Supreme Court, the Court of Appeals, and all other courts or tribunals in all civil actions and special proceedings in which the government or any officer thereof, in his official capacity, is a party. There are others, Mr. President, the enforcement of government contracts, handling cases involving validity of treaties, laws, executive issuances. These are all covered by the OSG. 4, appear in all proceedings involving Philippine citizenship. 5, land registration, reversion proceedings. 6, rules and guidelines for government entities. And 7, deputize provincial city fiscals to assist him in the performance of any function or discharge of any duty incumbent upon him within the jurisdiction of the aforesaid provincial or city fiscal or prosecuting officer. 8, deputize legal officers of government offices. 9, call on government offices for assistance. 10, represent the Republic in international litigation. 11, act as tribune of the people. Before any court, tribunal, body, or commission in any matter, action, or proceedings which, in his opinion, affects the welfare of the people as the ends of justice may require. Now, Mr. President, this clearly delineates the functions, and I realize that under the section that you quoted a while ago, Section 1 and 77 of Section 1, Chapter 1, Title 3, there would seem to be a collision to a certain degree. But I think the latter provision will prevail.
I think, Mr. President, we can debate on the specific specific powers later on. But just as a concept, just as a matter of policy, would the sponsor agree that the Department of Justice and the Secretary of Justice, pursuant to its mandate under the revised administrative code, should be the principal, and to the extent to the principal lawyer of the government, and his actions should be binding as it is on the entire government structure. We can, if we are agreeable on that principle, then the other subsequent sections can be so crafted, the law can be so crafted in order that that policy and that structure can be pursued, which is the structure today, but over the years has been confused, has been muddled. I am speaking from experience, Mr. President. It is, as Secretary of Justice, it was so difficult because we have, you know, I have somebody else who I have to convince or to debate with, insofar as this is concerned. Just recently, Mr. President, it will be recalled that in the case of, I think it is Senator Trillanes,
Yes.
where the issue of
Amnesty.
Amnesty was concerned, when the court denied the application for warrant of arrest on Senator Trillanes, the Solicitor General said, we will bring the matter to an appellate court. What did the Secretary of Justice say? No, we will file a motion for reconsideration. That demonstrates the very unclear boundaries between the two offices. I could not cite a more concrete example than that one of which is of a recent history. It is in that sense, Mr. President, that this bill provides us with the opportunity to correct once and for all these confusing lines of jurisdiction. And we know that this has happened during martial law, when the various PDs were issued, and therefore, as I said, I am talking from personal experience. Ang nangyayari po, dalawa ang abogado ng pamahalaan.
Yeah.
At in many instances, the Secretary of Justice would see the Solicitor General only during budget time, when the Solicitor General would submit his budget to the Secretary of Justice, And in effect, tell the Secretary of Justice, Mr. Secretary, isama mo ito sa budget ninyo. Yun lang po. We cannot interfere in any manner, even if the Secretary of Justice is the Attorney General, the equivalent of the Attorney General in our jurisdiction. He cannot, because the law has been structured so that it diminishes the functions extensively of the Secretary of Justice. He cannot function as an Attorney General, and in fact, the jurisdictional boundaries are so muddled that it has resulted many times in disagreements between the two principal lawyers of the department. And I was hoping that this bill will give us an opportunity to correct that if that is in consonance with the policy of the good sponsor.
Mr. President, the observation is indeed very prescient. I too find it, contradicting one another at times. And at times there has to be an able referee, like the President, who will have to give the signal. As it is, Mr. President, we are all aware, you especially, the gentleman especially, being a former Secretary of Justice, that the Solicitor General is really what you call the attached agency of the Department of Justice. And from that standpoint, I'd imagine that the Department of Justice, provided the Department of Justice will allow the OSG with respect to the specific provisions under the revised administrative code that belongs to the Office of the Solicitor General. But I do feel, however, that at some point in time, this Senate and the Congress should really come out and decide whether the DOJ can overrule his OSG. Because right now, the OSG has become a cabinet member, practically. And so it assumes a co-equal status. But we all know that in the United States, for example, there's no really, the Attorney General is the Department of Justice. Yes. And that's why there are no clashes. And perhaps it may be time, as the good gentleman has observed, that the Senate debate this matter and look into that possibility. Because, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, I was discussing this with my staff earlier when you talk about it acts as a tribunal, as a tribune of the people. I said, what does that mean? And, it's very clear on criminal and civil cases, criminal cases, it will be the task of the OSG. But what is the tribune's function? And I'd imagine, yun ay nagiging palusot in the case of Senator Trillanes, na ginamit nila yung tribune para makialam. And as you say, dapat, my own view is, if I were Secretary of Justice, I would ask the President to clarify this matter and that I should be in charge of all matters involving the department, including the OSD.
So I guess, Mr. President, I guess the first order of business is for the committee to tell the chamber what is the policy that the committee would recommend to the chamber to adopt vis-a-vis the relationship of the Secretary of Justice and the Solicitor General, so that we can pattern the provisions of this bill in accordance with the policy that that we can debate on, which can be initiated by the good sponsor of the measure.
Yes, Your Honor. Originally, as we all know, the OSG had asked us to level the playing field insofar as lawyers are concerned, because naglilipitan ho yung mga lawyers eh. Gumanda yung provisions ng judges, umaalis yung mga lawyers ng OSG at pumupunta doon sa mga judges positions. Tapos ngayon, ombudsman, ginandahan natin. Ngayon, inahabol po natin yung kanilang mga sweldo para magpare-pareho na, pero hindi pa po tayo tapos. Pumasok ang Supreme Court at tinaas yung sweldo nung sa first level judges sa Municipal Court, ginawang SG 28. So that is something that we'll have to consider while we're discussing this now.
Yes, but even before we go into that, Mr. President, as I said from the very start, there are in effect two portions of this bill. The first one deals with the relationship and the jurisdiction of the Solicitor General vis-a-vis the Secretary of Justice.
That's correct,
And
yes.
the second part is on the salary and benefits of the Solicitor Generals. As I said, the second aspect of the bill, I have no views on that. I will leave that to the good sponsor. I am keen and will interpolate in the hope that we can settle the policy issue and the conflict of jurisdiction between the OSG and the Department of Justice Secretary, which has resulted in two lawyers competing for authority over government legal affairs. And this is on a daily basis, Mr. President. Hindi lang po ito taon-taon, ngunit araw-araw po nangyayari na hindi po magkatugma ang kapangyarihan na nakalagay sa batas ng kalihim ng kagawaran ng katarungan at ng Solicitor General. That is why I will repeat, I would like to listen to the recommendation of the good sponsor insofar as the policy issue is concerned, because we can easily craft the amendments and the questions if we can agree on that policy issue that we have proposed to the good sponsor.
Well, as I pointed out, not only today, but in the previous discussion I had with the distinguished minority floor leader, it is important that there be clarity of leadership and of opinion making. And as I understand it, Mr. President, from the OSG folks here, during the time of Secretary De Lima, the OSG could not do anything unless the Secretary of Justice says so. Although, of course, I think it cannot, it needs to be canalized into bounds that keep it from overflowing. And that is where the Department of Justice must come in. If he feels that the Solicitor General is not able to do it, I would imagine that if we were in a position of power, I would give the Secretary of Justice the sole prerogative, because when you choose a Secretary of Justice, he really is the President's lawyer, although he has a Presidential Legal Counsel in matters of government affairs, no? Especially international and domestic, especially in the matter of administration of justice. So I would imagine, Mr. President, I would not look with disfavor on an amendment that will say we become true to the general provisions in Section 1 of the Revised Administrative Code under the title that you cited, that the Secretary of Justice be the principal lawyer, primus inter pares, Mr. President.
All right, if that is and I concur with that, Mr. President, if that is the premise of the gentleman sponsor, then we can be very clear in our questions, and which will lead to the appropriate amendments, which will be in consonance with and will support that policy pronouncement of the good sponsor that will find its way in the bill. So we thank the good gentleman for that position, and we shall now proceed with some specific questions.
If I may ask the gentleman to tarry a little, I just want to point out that the thrust of the committee was really to equalize the salaries at that time. And while we could have gone this way, because we did that for the ombudsman, the point that has been made is quite clear to me, and I agree with it, that as in the United States, there is one Attorney General that can handle all these things, and that he is assisted by other lawyers within the department.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I guess given the policy pronouncement of the good sponsor, the discussion and our interpretation personally will start with page 4. And first, this has something to do with the existing power of the Solicitor General, and that is on page 4, line 12. All right. On page 4, line 12, the power of the Solicitor General is to act and represent the Republic and/or the people before any court, tribunal, body, or commission in any matter, action, or proceeding which, in his opinion, affects the welfare of the people and the ends of justice may require. Now, Mr. President, let me touch on the caseload of the Solicitor General. And during the committee hearing, the presentation was made that the Office of the Solicitor General is so much burdened with so many cases. The caseload is about
392,000 cases.
300, the presentation of the OSD says 380,173 cases, 380,173 current total active cases. Although of these 380,000, 132,000 is deputized to the prosecutors nationwide, and 248,173 is not deputized and handled directly by the Office of the Solicitor General. Is that correct, sir?
That's correct, Your Honor.
Yes. Now, as a result, there are 1,400 cases assigned to each lawyer in the Office of the Solicitor General.
1,464 as of November 19, Your Honor.
Yeah. Of which, theoretically, 600 cases are assigned per lawyer, although the 600 cases, the presentation says most are terminated and do not require OSG participation. But the question that I'm raising is in relation to the handling of numerous cases involving annulment of marriages.
Yes.
I cannot understand why the Solicitor General would have to intervene in annulment of cases on appeal. There is a Supreme Court decision, I understand, in the case of Republic versus EOE, 2005 decision, which says, the intervention of the Solicitor General in annulment and nullity of marriage proceedings serves and contributes to the realization of the state's intent to protect marriage and families. Fine. The question is isn't this the implication is that the Solicitor General's office must check against possible collusion between the spouses,
Yes,
which
Your Honor.
results in annulment being undeserved.
Yes, Your Honor.
But the question is, shouldn't that be the role of the judge, so that if she notices or he finds that on the basis of the evidence there is collusion, he should deny the annulment decree? Why is the Solicitor General burdened with examining whether the judge failed in its duty? Which leads me to the proposition that we should not burden our solicitors with these private cases between a couple who could no longer live as husband and wife and seeks an annulment. The matter of collusion, the matter of possible collusion is the duty of the judge to check, not the duty of the solicitor to appeal.
Your Honor, I believe it is an exaggeration of the constitutional provision that marriage is a social institution which the state cherishes and protects, if my memory serves correct. However, Mr. President, I just want to say that I agree that, important cases should be handled, especially on prosecution.
Yes.
But in the matter of judges, it seems that we are actually judging the judges.
That's correct, sir.
Imposing our own individual, and I think it adds to the bureaucracy and to the burden. We're adding more judges, Mr. President, and that's why your first proposal, if I may digress a little bit, I agree with, because we're adding judges, and if the President decides to appoint more judges, you'll need more lawyers, and under this provision, the Department of Justice can add to the burden of providing more prosecutors, which is its charge anyway. Now, on the matter of legal separation so to prevent collusion, I agree, Mr. Chairman, that I think one judge is enough.
Yeah.
And that's why you have a prosecutor there.
Yes,
at
you
the
have a
time now.
prosecutor, that's correct, sir. You have a prosecutor which is deputized to make sure that there is no collusion.
That's correct, Your Honor.
And the
Therefore-
judge is supposed to render a judgment on the basis that there is no collusion.
That's correct, Your Honor.
And yet, we burden the Solicitor General office with appealing this decision because in his judgment, there can be collusion. I mean, it doesn't make sense at all. We should unburden the Solicitor General's office with these cases and leave it to the parties to litigate on this, even on appeal.
I agree, Your Honor. The gentleman will recall during the hearings, I raised this issue.
Yes,
That
yes.
What are you doing with all these annulment cases that should
Yes.
be given to the judges? And I agree, Your Honor, and I will accept an amendment, and I will present an amendment to this effect.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. President. Now, would you want me now to go over the specifics? And because my boss, the majority leader, said that if we can, he can be given some time because he has a private appointment. And
Yeah, but we can amend that. Yeah.
so if we can, so that there will be no break in the trend of thought, may I suggest, if with your permission, that we suspend now the interpretation, and we are ready, we can take it up again next time, to allow the majority leader to attend to his personal...
I'm willing to stay a bit longer, Mr.
We
President.
still have the floor, Mr. Majority Leader. Yeah, so,
Your Honor, Mr. President, I would say yes in a flash to Senator DeLon, my good friend. Except that, I have a lot of OSGC who have been looking for me, and they've been lobbying with us for a long
well,
time.
we know that they've been lobbying, and they are concerned about their salary.
Of course.
As I said, I will
Christmas
not
is
touch,
around the corner.
I will not touch on the salary. I will leave that to the chair, to the sponsor, and to the chamber. But I hope that the good sponsor will see the validity of the points that I raised insofar as the jurisdiction with the Department of Justice is concerned.
The points that have been made are very acceptable to this representation. I consider them home runs, Your Honor, that I think should be considered as timely now, especially that we're trying to speed up the administration of justice in this country and prevent all kinds of disagreements and to clarify the respective positions on the matter that has already been raised. And I would succumb right away to the request of the good gentleman to...
No, and also, Mr. President,
to
given the statement of the good sponsor on a policy issue, we will now review our questions and the proposed
With the
amendments
rest of the
on the basis of the policy pronouncement of the good sponsor.
Yes, Your Honor. Although this should be a policy made by the Senate, Mr. President, I'm flattered.
Yes, I'm just referring to the sponsor recommending to the Senate a policy which he will push for. Well, so with that, Mr. President, may we request that we suspend our interpretation
Again,
and bring this back again on the floor at the convenient time of the good sponsor.
Again, I tarry a little insofar as is concerned. Just a point. I already agreed, Your Honor. I just want to point out that since everybody would know that I agree already, there will be extensive lobbying, I'm sure, by other members of the OSG on this matter, and that might prolong the... but I'm ready to accept that, Your Honor.
Okay,
That's
thank you
part of
very
my
much.
job.
Thank
Thank
you
you, Your
very
Honor.
All right, Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, alam mo naman, suporta tayo dito sa amendments sa Soldier Bill. As a matter of fact, we were supposed to have merienda, but I still haven't had merienda. So that we extend session, and I got Senator Joel to preside while you were were you taking a quick break, so that we can tackle this issue right away. But we thank the good minority floor leader for his time. And I believe there's only two left to interpolate. It's the good minority floor leader and Senator Ralph Recto. and after which we can already move for the amendments and then move for its second reading approval. I guarantee the members of the Solgen, because there is, truly there are lobbying from our friends in the Solgen to finish this. What I can guarantee them is that it is in the agenda every day. We can guarantee them that. Secondly, we can guarantee them that we will tackle this first item on Monday. Anyway, Mr. President, we both know that we won't be able to tackle the budget on Monday. As a matter of fact, the sponsor of the budget, Senator Lauren Legarda, is requesting for an all-member caucus on Monday so we can discuss the schedule for the national budget. But I guarantee the Solgen, before we tackle the national budget, we will try to finish the measure. May I just request them to also proceed to discuss this with Senator Recto, so that when they talk to Senator Recto, maybe possible amendments and considerations are already made, so that when we discuss, when we debate with, or the debates with Senator Recto and Senator Gordon will happen, it will shorten the proceedings, and so that we can pass it hopefully by next week. With that, Mr. President, I move that we, with our assurance to the Solgen, Mr. President, we will tackle this and prioritize this next week. I move that we suspend Senate Bill number 1823. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, consideration measure is suspended.
May I just ask for a quick suspension, Mr. President?
Session is suspended.
Ready to resume, Mr. President?
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, we're in receipt of the letter from Senator J.V. Ejercito, Chairperson of the Committee on Health and Demography, designating Senator Gordon as the chairperson of the subcommittee on that will handle Senate Bill number 2096, an act providing an opt-out system for of organ donation and transplantation, amending Republic Act 7170, otherwise known as the Organ Donation Act of 1991. With the permission of the body, I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
Mr. President, also, I move to transfer Senate Bill number 1746 from the Committee on Rules to the Committee on Local Government. This is the renaming of the province of Compostela Valley to Davao de Oro Province, as I'm the author of that, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
You are now the chair of the subcommittee on organs. Mr. President, we have additional conferees to some bicameral conference committees. With the permission of the body, I move to proceed on the Senate designation of an additional conferee to the bicameral conference on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 1233 and House Bill number 5745. This is the Coconut Farmer and Industry Trust Fund. I so move, Mr. President.
Right, the following members are hereby designated as additional conferees to the Bicameral Conference Committee on Senate Bill 1233 and House Bill 5745. Senator Escudero and Senator Drilon on the part of the minority. So designated.
Coco Levy Fund? Hindi pa pala tapos yan. Akala ko natapos. Additional conferees. Yeah, we had to, yes. Mr. President, yes, he was originally in the measure. Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move that we proceed with the Senate President's designation of the conferees for the Conference Committee on the Disagreeing Provisions of Senate Bill number 1976 and House Bill number 8552. This is an act to further strengthen the Philippine Coconut Authority.
The following members are designated as conferees. Senator Cynthia Villar as chairman, members Recto, Escudero, Ejercito, Gatchalian, Drilon, and Pangilinan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we have other conferees. I move that we proceed with the Senate President's designation of the Senate conferees to the Bicameral Conference Committee on the Disagreeing Provisions of Senate Bill number 1391 and House Bill number 8014. This is the mandatory PhilHealth coverage for persons with disabilities.
The following members are hereby designated as conferees on the part of the Senate for the Bicameral Conference Committee. Senator J.V. Ejercito as chairman, members Gatchalian, Villar, Angara, may we ask the minority leader if Senator De Lima can be made at conferee?
Mr. President, I believe Senator Risa Ontiveros is the designation of the minority.
All right, so Ejercito, Gatchalian, Villar, Angara, and Ontiveros.
Yes. Mas letter siya. Hindi, pero hindi naman siya pwede mag-attend. Paano naman sign? Okay, Mr. President. And just for the manifestation, further manifesting that my transfer earlier of my bill from the Committee on Rules to the Committee on Local Government on the renaming of the Davao, Compostela Valley to Davao de Oro may be reflected in the committee report, because I had a copy of the committee report and it's not reflected there that I also filed the measure, so that at least it can be shown that I'm a co-sponsor of the said measure. Thank you, Mr. President. With that, Mr. President, we'd like to also now move to resume consideration House Bill number 6708 under Committee Report number 462.
Any objection? There being none, consideration of the measure is in order.
This is an act extending another 25 years the franchise granted to Advanced Media Broadcasting System. May we recognize the sponsor, Senator Grace Poe, to sponsor.
Continue.
Mr. President, there being no members to interpolate, may we close the period of interpolation?
Any objection? There being none, period of interpolation is closed.
May we open the period of amendments, Mr. President?
Any objection? There being none, period of amendments is open.
May we recognize the sponsor, Senator Grace Poe, to give her.
Senator Grace Poe is recognized.
Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move to withdraw the committee amendments that were proposed in committee report number 462 and revert to the House version. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, proposed amendment is withdrawn.
I believe we have individual amendments.
Yes, Mr. President, I have individual amendments. On
You may
page...
proceed with the individual amendments.
On committee, okay. As an individual amendment on Committee Report 462 on page 4, line 27, insert new provisions. Section 9, commitment to provide and promote the creation of employment opportunities. The grantee shall create employment opportunities and shall allow on-the-job trainings in their franchise operation, provided that priority shall be accorded to the residents where their principal office is located, provided further that the grantee shall follow the applicable labor standards and allowance entitlement under existing laws, rules, and regulations and similar issuances, provided finally that the employment opportunities or jobs created shall be reflected in the general information sheet to be submitted to the Securities and Exchange Commission annually. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
On page 5, section 9, be renumbered and make it section 10. Then on lines 7 to 8, delete the phrase whether as a whole or in part and whether. Retain the word simultaneously and delete the phrase or contemporaneously. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
Then on line 10, delete the colon after the word Philippines and replace it with a period, followed by the deletion of the words provided that. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
On line 15, delete the colon after the word transaction and replace it with a period, followed by the deletion of the words provided further that. And finally, capitalize letter F of failure of the next sentence. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
And lastly, on line 17, delete the colon after the word revoked and replace it with period, followed by the deletion of words provided, finally, that, and capitalize letter A of any of the next sentence. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
No further individual amendment, Mr. President.
With that, Mr. President, I think section 9 is a
What's that?
Yeah.
With that, Mr. President, we close the period of amendments.
Yes, and the other sections renumbered. Any objection? There being none, period of amendment is closed.
Mr. President, with that, we move to approve House Bill number 6708, second reading.
Any objection? Chair hears none. House Bill 6708 is approved in second reading.
We move to suspend consideration of the same.
Consideration measure is suspended.
Mr. President, we move to resume consideration House Bill number 6316. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment, consideration is in order.
This is an act granting Northeastern Broadcasting Services a franchise to construct, install, operate, maintain radio TV broadcasting in Isabela Province and Region 2. May we recognize Senator Grace Poe. But before we recognize Senator Grace Poe, no member of this chamber will signify to interpolate the measure. May we move to close the period of interpolation, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, period of interpolation is closed.
May we recognize Senator Grace Poe for the amendments.
Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move to withdraw the committee amendments that were proposed in committee report number 465 and revert to the House version. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, proposed committee amendments are withdrawn. You may proceed with the individual amendments.
May I move that the period of amendments be closed?
We have no more individual?
Uh,
No more individual?
We have individual amendments, Mr. President.
Yes, let us open the period of individual amendments. You may proceed.
Mr. President, as an individual amendment on page 4, line 15, insert new provisions, section 9, commitment to provide and promote the creation of employment opportunities. The grantee shall create employment opportunities and shall allow on-the-job trainings in their franchise operation, provided that priority shall be accorded to the residents where their principal office is located, provided further that the grantee shall follow the applicable labor standards in allowing entitlement under existing laws, rules, and regulations and similar issuances, provided finally that the employment opportunities or jobs created shall be reflected in the general information sheet to be submitted to the Securities and Exchange Commission annually. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, amendments adopted.
On page 4, section 10, be renumbered and make it section 11. Then on lines 21 to 22, delete the phrase whether as a whole or in part, and whether retain the word simultaneously and delete the phrase or contemporaneously. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
Then on line 24, delete the colon after the word Philippines and replace it with a period, followed by the deletion of the words provided that. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Amendment is adopted.
On line 28, delete the colon after the word transaction and replace it with a period, followed by the deletion of the words provided further, that, and finally capitalize letter F of failure for the next sentence. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
And lastly, on line 29 of page 4 and line 1 of page 5, delete the colon after the word revoked and replace it with with period, followed by the deletion of words provided, finally that, and capitalize letter A of any of the next sentence. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Amendment is adopted. No other individual amendments?
With that, Mr. President, we close the period of individual and committee amendments.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Period of individual amendments is closed.
Mr. President, we move to approve on second reading House Bill number 6316. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, House Bill 6316 is approved on second reading.
Mr. President, we move to suspend consideration of the same.
Consideration of the measure is suspended.
Mr. President, I move to resume consideration House Bill number 6315. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved. 6315 is in order.
Mr. President, this is an act granting Volunteer Life Care Ministries a franchise for Bright radio broadcasting stations. We move to close the period of interpolation as no member wishes to interpolate.
Any objection? The chair hears none. Period of interpolation is closed.
Mr. President, I move that we open the period of amendments and recognize the sponsor, Senator Grace Poe.
Senator Grace Poe is recognized for the period of committee amendments.
Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move to withdraw the committee amendments that were proposed in committee report number 466 and revert to the House version. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, amendments are withdrawn.
May I propose individual amendments, Mr.
Yes,
President?
you may proceed with the individual amendments.
Mr. President, as an individual amendment on page 4, line 15, insert new provisions, section 9, commitment to provide and promote the creation of employment opportunities. The grantee shall create employment opportunities and shall allow on-the-job trainings in their franchise operation, provided that priority shall be accorded to the residents where their principal office is located, provided further that the grantee shall follow the applicable labor standards and allowance entitlement under existing laws, rules, and regulations, and similar issuances, provided finally that the employment opportunities or jobs created shall be reflected in the general information sheet to be submitted to the Securities and Exchange Commission annually. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
On page 4, section 10, be renumbered and make it section 11, then in lines 21 to 22, delete the phrase whether as a whole or in part, and whether, retain the word simultaneously and delete the phrase or contemporaneously. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Then on line 24, delete the colon after the word Philippines and replace it with a period, followed by the deletion of the words provided that. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Amendment is adopted.
On line 28, delete the colon after the word transaction and replace it with a period, followed by the deletion of the words provided further that, and finally capitalize letter F of failure of the next sentence. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Amendment is approved.
And lastly, on line 29 of page 4, and line 1 of page 5, delete the colon after the word revoked and replace it with period, followed by the deletion of words provided, finally that, and capitalize letter A of any of the next sentence. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
No further individual amendments, Mr. President.
With that, Mr. President, move to close the period of amendments.
Any objection? There being none, period of amendments is closed.
Mr. President, I move to approve on second reading House Bill number 6315. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Chair hears none. House Bill 6315 is approved on second reading.
Mr. President, move to suspend consideration of the same.
Consideration of the measure is suspended.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration House Bill number 6170.
Any objection? There being none, consideration of the measure is in order.
It's an act granting broadcasting franchise to DXRA RMC, Rizal Memorial Colleges. Mr. President, there being no member to interpolate, move to close the period of interpolation.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we open the period of amendments, both committee and individual.
Any objection? Period of amendments open.
May we recognize the sponsor, Senator Grace.
Senator Grace Poe is recognized.
Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move to withdraw the committee amendments that were proposed and in committee report number 467 and revert to the House version. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I'd like to introduce individual amendments.
You may proceed with the individual amendments.
Mr. President, as an individual amendment on page 4, line 15, insert new provisions. Section 18, commitment to provide and promote the creation of employment opportunities. The grantee shall create employment opportunities and shall on-the-job trainings in their franchise operation, provided that priority shall be accorded to the residents where their principal office is located, provided further that the grantee shall follow the applicable labor standards and allowance entitlement under existing laws, rules, and regulations and similar issuances, provided finally that the employment opportunities or jobs created shall be reflected in the general information sheet to be submitted to the Securities and Exchange Commission. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
On page 4, section 10, be renumbered and make it section 11. Then on lines 21 to 22, delete the phrase whether as a whole or in part, and whether retain the word simultaneously and delete the phrase or contemporaneously. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
Then on line 24, delete the colon after the word Philippines and replace it with a period, followed by the deletion of the words provided that. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
On line 28, delete the colon after the word transaction and replace it with a period, followed by the deletion of the words provided further that. And finally, capitalize letter F of failure of the next sentence. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
And lastly, on line 29 of page 4 and line 1 of page 5, delete the colon after the word revoked and replace it with the period, followed by the deletion of words. I'm sorry, let me repeat. And lastly, on page 29 of page 4 and line 1 of page 5, revoked and replace it with period, followed by the deletion of words provided, finally that, and capitalize letter A of any of the next sentence. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
There are no further individual amendments, Mr.
President, with that, we move to close the period of amendments.
Any objection? There being none, period of amendments is closed.
Mr. President, move to approve on second reading House Bill number 6170. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, House Bill 6170 is approved on second reading.
Thank you, Mr. President. We move to suspend consideration of the same.
Consideration measure is suspended.
And last one for today on the franchise, as requested by the good sponsor. May we resume consideration House Bill number 6169. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, consideration of 6169 is in order.
Mr. President, there being no member to interpolate, move to close the period of interpolation.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Period of interpolation is closed.
Yes, this is an act granting a broadcasting franchise to Philippine Broadcasting Corporation. Mr. President, may we move to open the period of amendments.
Any objection? The period of amendments is open.
We recognize Senator Grace.
Senator Grace Po is recognized.
Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move to withdraw the committee amendments that were proposed in Committee Report Number 468 and revert to the House version. I so move.
No objection, the committee amendments are withdrawn. You may proceed with the individual amendments.
Mr. President, as an individual amendment on page 4, line 18, insert new provisions. Section 9, commitment to provide and promote the creation of employment opportunities. The grantee shall create employment opportunities and shall allow on-the-job trainings in their franchise operations, provided that priority shall be afforded to the residents where their principal office is located, provided further that the grantee shall follow the applicable labor standards and allowance entitlement under existing laws, rules, and regulations and similar issuances. Provided finally that the employment opportunities or jobs created shall be reflected in the General Information Sheet to be submitted to the Securities and Exchange Commission annually. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
On page 5, section 9, be renumbered and make it section 10. Then on lines 23 to 24, delete the phrase whether as a whole or in part, and whether retain the word simultaneously and delete the phrase or contemporaneously. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
Then on line 26, delete the colon after the word Philippines and replace it with a period, followed by the deletion of the words provided that. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
On page 5, line 1, delete the colon after the word transaction and replace it with a period, followed by the deletion of the words provided further that, and finally capitalize letter F of failure of the next sentence. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
And lastly, on page 5, lines 2 to 3, delete the colon after the word revoke and replace it with period, followed by the deletion of words provided finally that, and capitalize letter A of any of the next sentence. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
There are no further individual amendments, Mr. President.
Mr. President, we move to close the period of amendments.
Any objection? There being none, period of amendments is closed.
Mr. President, with that, we move to approve on second reading House Bill number 6169. I so move. 6169.
Any objection? There being none, House Bill 6169 is approved on second reading.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, move to suspend consideration of the same.
Consideration measure is suspended.
May I just ask for a quick suspension, Mr. President? 1 minute suspension.
Session is suspended.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, the distinguished sponsor, Senator Grace Po, would like to give her sponsorship speech to several franchise measures. We have done this in the past, Mr. President, with the permission of the body. If I may read for consideration or transfer for calendar of special order several bills, and after which the sponsor may now give her omnibus sponsorship speech. With the permission of the body, and I've also sought clearance from the Minority Floor Leader. Mr. President, I move to transfer, with the permission of the body, I move to transfer from the calendar of ordinary business to calendar of special orders, committee report, House Bill numbers 7199, 7754, 6754, 7754, 7386, 7753, 6914, 7385, 5654, and 6913. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, the enumerated House bills are transferred.
And Mr. President, with the consent of the body, I move that we consider House Bill number 7199, 7754, 6754, 7752, 7386, 7753, 6914, 7385, 5654, and 6913. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, enumerated House bills are in order.
May we ask the
Considerations.
Secretary to read the title of the measures?
Secretary will read the short titles of the measures.
Short titles of the measures.
House Bill number 7911, an act renewing for another 25 years the franchise granted to Delta Broadcasting System. House Bill number 7754, an act renewing for another 25 years the franchise granted to First Love Broadcasting Network. House Bill number 6754, an act renewing the franchise granted to Ultrasonic Broadcasting System. House Bill number 7752, an act extending for another 25 years the franchise granted to Insular Broadcasting System, Inc. House Bill number 7386, an act renewing for another 25 years the franchise granted to the Andres Bonifacio College Broadcasting System, Inc. House Bill number 7753, an act extending for another 25 years the franchise granted to the Iglesia Ni Cristo Church of Christ. House Bill number 6914, an act extending for another 25 years the franchise granted to Peña Francia Broadcasting Corporation. House Bill number 7385, an act renewing the franchise granted to Philippine Communications Satellite Corporation, Philcomsat. House Bill number 5654, an act granting a legislative franchise to Cotabato Electric Cooperative, Inc., Cotelco, Palma. House Bill number 6913, an act renewing the franchise granted to Radio Marine Network, Incorporated.
The Majority Leader.
Mr. President, may we recognize the sponsor, the distinguished gentlelady, Senator Grace Poe, to give her sponsorship speech.
Senator Grace Poe is recognized to sponsor the measures.
Mr. President, dearest colleagues, as the chairperson of the Senate Committee on Public Services, it is my honor to sponsor Committee Reports 502, 503, 504, 505, 506, 507, 508, 509, 510, and 511, which seek to grant and/or renew the legislative franchises of various broadcasting, telecommunications, and electric companies. In the consideration of these measures, the Committee on Public Services consulted a number of government and non-government stakeholders to determine, on one hand, the fitness and worthiness of those seeking renewal to continue doing business, and on the other hand, the viability and foresight of new applicants. These include the National Telecommunications Commission, the Energy Regulatory Commission, the Bureau of Internal Revenue, and the National Tax Research Center, the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Philippine Competition Commission, and the Kapisanan ng Broadcaster ng Pilipinas, and all others. Mr. President, we succinctly discussed and assessed the applicants. Hindi po pang beauty pageant, kundi masinsinang pagsusuri ang isinagawa ng inyong komite. After all, radio and telecoms frequencies are scarce resources that should not be wasted on non-performing companies, and electric distribution cannot be assigned to someone who cannot afford to build a single utility pole. Ngayon, isa nating kilalanin ang mga aplikante. Unahin natin ang Delta Broadcasting System. This is a broadcast network of the El Shaddai Catholic Movement, which has an estimated 8 million members worldwide. They air religious and commercial programs 21 hours a day on their AM station DWXI, 1314 kilohertz, which covers the whole of Metro Manila and nearby provinces. They also have a TV station, UHF TV 35 DWDE. Susunod naman, ang First Love Broadcasting Network Incorporated. They primarily cater to listeners in Dipolog City, Zamboanga del Norte. Their mission is to uplift original Filipino music and to connect the people through excellent music and unbiased information program. Next, we have the Ultrasonic Broadcast System Incorporated. Nagsimula ang broadcast operations ng ultrasonic noong 1990, after which they expanded in Manila in 2003. They are more popularly known by their station ID of Energy 106.7 FM, through which they provide music, news, as well as educational and informative programs. Then we have the franchise renewal of Insular Broadcasting System, Incorporated. They've been operating since 1995 pursuant to Republic Act number 7964. Their primary operations are in Metro Manila under the station ID 979 Home Radio. In addition to music and entertainment programs, they provide news and information segments, including traffic updates and public service announcements from the government, especially during calamities. Moving forward, they're planning to expand their operations to Siparay, Negros Occidental, and Bislig, Surigao del Sur. Next is the proposed franchise renewal of the Andres Bonifacio College Broadcasting System, Incorporated. Based in Dipolog City, Zamboanga del Norte, they have been broadcasting since 1995. They have been operating in synergy with their namesake Andres Bonifacio College, a non-profit educational institution. We also have the proposed franchise renewal of the Iglesia ni Cristo. As we all know, the Iglesia ni Cristo is an independent Christian church. They have reached 95 countries and 6 territories. In the Philippines, they have an estimated 2.5 million members. Their legislative franchise, granted by virtue of Republic Act number 4339, is one of their primary means of communicating among its members. Next is the franchise of the Peña Francia Broadcasting Corporation. Their primary base of operations is in Camarines Sur, wherein they broadcast using AM frequency 711 and FM frequency 92.7. They are seeking to extend operations to the rest of the country. Moving forward, we have the proposed franchise renewal of the Philippine Communication Satellite System Corporation, or PhilComSat. Operating since 1996, they are currently owned by the Philippine Overseas Telecommunications Corporation. They are currently focused on providing VSAT, very small aperture services to the government. Their main government client is the Armed Forces of the Philippines, who are interested in the application of VSAT as its primary and backup communication system. Next is the franchise application of Cotelco Palma. They are the sister cooperative of the main Cotabato Electric Cooperative, which presently serves the 2nd and 3rd legislative districts of the province. In contrast, the proposed franchise of Cotelco Palma covers the 1st legislative district of Cotabato. They have the difficult task of serving 80,400 households, of which only 45,564, or 56.7%, are energized. Finally, we have the franchise Radio Marine Network Incorporated. Radio Marine has been operating since 1965, when their legislative franchise was granted by virtue of Republic Act number 4607. They are concentrated on providing ship-to-shore communications using high-frequency radios. If their franchise is enacted, their services will be expanded to include wire and wireless telecommunication systems, fiber optics, copper, and satellite transmit and receive systems. To end on a human note, it is also worth noting that Radio Marine Network's original assignee, Mr. Sesgundo Lustre, is still active with the company despite being 89 years of age. He's the embodiment of the saying, "Do what you love and you'll never work another day in your life." In all of these franchises, the committee has inserted a special provision which require all franchise holders to generate employment opportunities in their local communities. A franchise, being a private entity, must contribute to the common good. In these difficult times in which prices continue to rise, ang paglikha ng maraming trabaho ay isang malaking tulong para sa bayan. Trabahong totoo at tunay para sa bayan at sa Pilipino. We believe that this additional mandate is their humble contribution towards the development of our nation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. With that, we move to suspend consideration of the said measures, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, consideration of the measures suspended.
Mr. President, may I, with the permission of the body, I move that for the change of referral of Senate Bill number 678 to the Committee on Ways and Means as the primary committee and secondarily the Committee of Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Motion is approved.
Mr. President, with that, I move that we adjourn, okay na, boss? With that, Mr. President, I move that we adjourn session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday, November 26.
Any objection? There being none, the session is adjourned until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Monday, November 26, 2018.